Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
Warren Ingram, you're very brave. Good evening. You're going to be talking about not just money, but relationships and money. I don't know. Clearly, bravery pills are on big supply in your house.
I've been taught everything I know by my wife, Stephen. So I can, if I say what she says, I'll be fine.
I know the feeling. But on a serious note, I mean, it's often known, and people who've been in relationships will know this, and it's often said by relationship counselors and people in that game, in that world, that one of the things two people in a relationship fight about is money. And often it's the consistent source of friction in a relationship. It's incredibly serious and can even define relationships for some people.
You're absolutely right, and it's one of those things where, because the way we interact with money is so closely linked to the way we were brought up, and some deep sort of emotional drivers around how we feel about ourselves and how we express our emotions to others. It's one of those things that it can be hugely harmful. It can obviously be a source of joy as well if handled correctly, but it is something that, you know, when you either starting a relationship or you are in one, it's something that requires proper planning, proper conversations, and it's I often find when talking to couples, they don't really have a game plan for how they each deal with money, how they deal with money collectively, and very often all they do is fight about it without actually having a proper conversation. And I think, you know, communication here as so much with relationships. You know, communication can help a lot if you do it correctly.
I suppose also, I mean, is it as simple as saying that one person in the relationship will be a saver and not want to spend money, and the other person will want to be a spender? I mean, is that too simplistic? But isn't that really the basis of these arguments?
I think it's about an attitude to money. So very often you'll find that you know, it could be that both people are in the relationship are spenders, and one worries about it and the other one doesn't. Or sometimes one person comes in and they've got an attitude of being frugal, you know, controlling the way that they spend, trying to save, and the other person, you know, just lives for today and can't really understand why you would want to delay gratification, and why you would not worry, you know, about how you are today, and why so worried about the future, and you know, if those are kind of the ways that you go in, you know, it's one of those areas. I think when you start as a couple, you need to firstly get into the relationship, and then very soon start to talk about this stuff, and start to share your attitudes to money, and maybe how you grew up with money, and then start to make some decisions as a collective about what are we going to do, and how do we get comfortable with our differences, and then what are the things that we can do together, and how do we find some commonality. And I think the one that worries me a lot is often the debt situation. You know, it's amazing how many times people could be in very serious relationships. You know, I mean, sometimes a marriage, but sometimes, you know, getting engaged, and one party's got an enormous amount of credit card debt or personal loans, and they haven't actually discussed that with their partner. And the frugal partner arrives in a relationship like that with a healthy, you know, a positive bank balance and a positive asset balance, and gets married to someone who's got a negative balance, and that is just not a way to start a relationship. But that's a reality. A lot of people are in that position.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, it also tests the limits of your honesty, doesn't it? I mean, I think that's one of the things that can happen. Is there something else, though, within this, that someone might think they're a saver, but they're actually a spender, and it's their partner who first tells them that, and that's immediately going to be a cause of friction? Very few people are going to identify as spenders, by the way.
I think it's a little bit about honesty, because if you say you're a saver, it's an easy thing to prove. You kind of sit down and you say, okay, well, you know, as we're now in a serious relationship, let's start to agree some financial goals, and if this is where we want to go, the only way we get somewhere is we need to start at the beginning. This is where we are today, and so here's my bank balance, here's my investment accounts, this is what I earn, and this is what I spend. And as you can see, there's a difference. I'm spending less than I'm earning, and where does that money go? It's going into these savings. Please share with me what you're doing. And right there is the evidence. I think if you think you're not a spender, but you have more money than you have month, then that's not true. You are a spender. It's not a value judgment. Some people might be in a position where life has happened and things have gone wrong for them, and they just can't get by. But I guess honestly. So sometimes it's not just that people are dishonest; it's that they're not even looking in the mirror and understanding the position they're in. That they can't even face it themselves. And often, Stephen, it's a huge source of shame. That people are arriving in a relationship with debt, and it could be debt that's caused by friends or family. It's not necessarily something that they've caused themselves, but they are ashamed, and now they've got to expose that to their partner and then kick off a relationship where they are together. So it's complex and messy, but I think disclosure and transparency, starting with yourself and then your partner, is key in something like this.
011-883-0702-021-4460567. Your questions for Warren Ingram this evening. We're talking about personal finance, money, and relationships. Warren, there must be several things that automatically lead to tension in a relationship. And I'm sure one of them is, especially when you start a relationship, and even later in life, someone will come knocking on the door, a friend, a family member, and they will ask one of the partners, "Can I please borrow money from you?" And after a time, that money that is being lent, it's not just your money, it's the family's money, or it's the relationship's money. And yet we all have obligations to people and we feel we must lend to them.
Yeah, that pressure is enormous, and in a country like ours where there's so many people who are first generation in the formal sector, earning money, where their parents or grandparents or siblings, etc., might be, living in the informal sector of South Africa and really desperate, for help. The pressure is really on. And so there will be that conversation from time to time, and it's not just in that first generation of people moving into the formally employed. It could be people that are third or fourth generation where they've got friends or family knocking on the door and asking for help. And so it's certainly, for me, it's one of those things that does cause conflict and often a lot of resentment, because one person will be working incredibly hard to try and save for their children's education and to pay off the family home. And what they see is money going out to family that might not be theirs, and it could be to support parents or it could be to support siblings, etc. And they feel a sense of unfairness. Why are our own children suffering or potentially suffering at the expense of other people, and shouldn't we be looking after our kids first? So it's one of those things that family and friends, they can be a great support network, but in a money sense, they could be adding a lot of pressure. And again, then it's a question of do you not love and respect my family, and they're in trouble, and why don't you care? So you're right, Stephen. It's a tricky one.
So sometimes it's very rare, I suppose, that people go into a relationship where they both come from the same financial background. Well, maybe they do. But it is probably going to be, it's quite common in some ways that you're going to have someone who's richer than someone else. It may be about income, it may be about the families that come from, it may even be to an extent sort of income right now in terms of career stage. How do you manage that? And I mean, history is full of examples where one partner was studying while the other was working, for example.
And maybe just added to that is, very often, women will take a big step backwards in their careers when they have children. They go on maternity leave, and sometimes the decision is made that they stay at home with the children for the first year or two of the child's life, and so their earning ability is then limited for that time. And when they go back into the workplace, they are 1 or 2 years behind from an earning point of view of where they were. And very often, and not pointing fingers here, not to start a gender debate, but equally that when the child needs to be collected from school because they're sick, it tends to be mom rather than dad. And so that difference in earning, could be around education, could be purely gender based, etc. And it changes the power balance in a relationship where one partner is earning more and the other one's earning less. And if not handled correctly, that can become a way of exerting control, but not in a good way. Where money gets used as a way to kind of exert control on another partner, and especially if it causes friction. That often in a divorce situation is one of the big reasons why marriages break down, because someone was using money as a power rather than as an enabler of the family's goals.
You can also want different things. I mean, some people want a nice car, some people want a private school for their kids, some people quite rationally will say we need to move to a better area for the family. I mean, that tension over a private school or a better area for the family can get very tough.
Yep, and I think in a situation like that, it's. I mean, can you imagine that lots of people are in this position? But can you imagine being that one parent to say, our family simply cannot afford to put our kids in the private school that you think is better. We need to make another plan, and that gets almost an emotional situation. Do you not love our children, etc. So it is very tricky, and cars for me is such an interesting one. Where a lot of people, and I'm making men out to be the bad guys here. It's not true, but a lot of men will prefer to drive a nice fancy car, and maybe the wife doesn't feel the same, and would rather that they spend more money paying down the bond. And then it's a sort of a resentment that we can't have nice things or something like that. And I'm not belittling it. This happens day after day in many relationships around South Africa. And again, it's one of those things where an alignment of goals would help a lot, to say, yes, it's nice to have a nice car, that we would all like that, but actually much more important to pay down our bond and to put our kids in the best school we can afford without putting the family into debt we can't recover from. And very often, I've said it on the show before, but putting your family into financial duress so that your child can go to private school is not a gift to the child, because the entire family operates under enormous pressure then. And that's something that will impact the child. So you're not helping them by putting them in a position like that.
We're speaking to Warren Ingram this evening. Personal finance, relationship advice too, how to manage money and relationships. Tebogo's got in touch asking, how should I maximize my tax-free savings account investment before investing in a retirement annuity? Very interesting question, Tebogo. We'll have an answer for you in a moment.
The Money Show. Personal finance with Warren Ingram.
And Warren, Tebogo's question, should I maximize my tax-free savings account investment before investing in a retirement annuity? Is that a good idea?
I think it's one of those things that you shouldn't box yourself in. You can certainly do both, and that would be my suggestion to Tebogo, is you take a portion of your money and you put in your retirement fund. Just as a reminder there, you get a nice tax break from SARS, and they give us so little free stuff. We should take everything we can. And one of these is a tax break on our contributions to our retirement fund. And then the money grows inside your retirement annuity tax free until the point when you need to take the money out as a pension, as an income. That tax-free growth and the tax break are very significant. And now with the two-pot system, if things go wrong, you can access a portion of your money over your career. So I like retirement funds, and I think we shouldn't disregard them. At the same time, tax-free savings accounts, they're not supposed to be short-term savings vehicles. They are meant to be for the long term, but they are accessible if something does happen and something big happens, and you can access the money. So if your funds are limited, and that pretty much describes all of us, then consider taking a portion of your money and putting in the tax-free, and a portion of your money and putting in the RA. And every year, if your income increases, then try and increase those contributions until you've maxed out your tax-free, because it works out to 3,000 Rand a month or 36,000 Rand a year. You can't do more than that. So then get to the point where you maximize, but don't disregard your RA entirely. I don't think that makes sense.
It's interesting, of course, to follow all of this. I mean, one of the things you want to do is try and reduce conflict in your relationship. Does establishing financial boundaries help? I mean, I've found having meetings about it and saying, this half hour on a Saturday, we're going to have a finance meeting, and actually have the meeting.
That's very responsible of you, Stephen. I think that's the point. Is that this is this is the where the rubber meets the road. The crux of the issue is, set aside some time. Potentially both of you on your own can sit down and say, what are the goals that are most important to me? What are the 2 or 3 things that I think absolutely have to do, and then what are the nice to haves, and then see between the 2 of you, when you then match that, can you find some common goals that are critical to you, things that you believe in deeply, and those should become the priority for both of you. And remember, it's not about sacrificing, because you're looking at something. This is incredibly important to both of you. This is the thing you prioritize, and the other things get onto the to-do list for the future. And I think that sort of communication is key, and finding commonality is key, and then being very honest. Some people are just not comfortable to share all of their money with their partner, and kind of putting everything together and not having something for themselves. And that's not wrong. It's a case of being able to say, the relationship's important, our shared goals are important, but what I'm going to do is I need some money that I allocate for myself, and that's just money that I can use on a discretionary basis. We'll agree the amount, or we agree the percentage, but I'm not going to sit down and ask you every day if I can please spend 50 Rand on whatever it is. We're going to agree that we each have a discretionary amount, and we allocate that to family, if that's what we want to do, or to things that we need to do. And I think, understanding that communication, it does give you the freedom then sometimes to say, no, we agree these things. These are the things that are important to both of us. But that means that there are some things that we need to set aside. No, you can't buy a new car right now. And it's not me saying that. That's the goal we agreed. No, I don't want to share everything. I want you to have the freedom to give some money to your family if that's what you want to do. And I want the freedom to do that as well. So if you can find agreement on the big goals and the big purchases, and then give each person some scope to allocate money to the things that they believe in that you might not believe, as long as that amount, that discretionary amount, doesn't derail the family and doesn't derail both of you as a unit, you should make peace with that. We are coming into these things as individuals. Yes, we're a couple. Yes, we've got shared goals, but all of us need some independence, and money. There's a concern I have is often around control. That relationships break down later in life because one person just feels so controlled and has no financial independence in a relationship. You should have joint goals and then individual goals, and everyone should feel comfortable that is how we operate.
I think there's a feeling that if you say no to money, you're saying no to the relationship. You need to be quite clear what is no and what is yes, and how one is about money and one is about the relationship.
Yeah, and I think we spoke a bit earlier about loans as well, and lending, and I think this applies as well. If we agree that these things are important to us, then we're both in alignment here that there's certain things that we're not going to do. We're not going to agree to do, and so it's not a power base. It's not about a value judgment on you as my partner. It's about saying, we've agreed particular goals. These are important to us, and so these things they must be on our A, B, C list. This is on the C list. Things we can get to one day when our financial position is better, and sometimes going on a fancy holiday might be really important to one person and not so important to the other, and then perhaps no isn't just no. It's perhaps saying, let's compromise and let's go on a smaller holiday where we get a break, but we're not putting ourselves under pressure. So you can find a way where you compromise rather than just outright kill the goals. That may be a bad solution as well for the long term.
Warren Ingram, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Co-founder of Galileo Capital. If you're brave, send the podcast to your partner tomorrow.